All right, let's grab our seats. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Saturday night 1-hour speaker meeting, Doylestown. Our chairperson tonight is Kara. She's going to come up here. We got, of course, always an amazing speaker. Don't forget, we got a ton of food back there, and I'm going to thank everybody for bringing pizza and hot dogs and cronuts and all the seafood shanty trimmings that we have here at no cost to anybody. We truly say this is the easier, softer way in Doylestown. Anyway, where's Miss Kara? Kara, please come up here and do what you do best. Let's welcome Kara.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kara. I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves? First names only.
Hi, Tara, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tara, welcome. Hi, Tim, welcome. Welcome. The contact speaker group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who cannot afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD Donations. If you would like a CD or any speaker, past or present, see me or any home group member before or after the meeting. They're available free of charge. Now I'd like to ask Brian to come up and read the preamble. Let's all give Brian a warm welcome.
My name is Brian and I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Now I'd like to welcome Michelle to read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle, and I'm an alcoholic. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 4. Made a fearless and searching moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
The seventh tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees, but we have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big book, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to introduce the speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Let's give Patty from York, Pennsylvania, a warm welcome. Woo-hoo!
Hi, my name is Patty Burke, and I am an alcoholic. My home group is White Rose. We meet Friday nights at 8 o'clock. We're a 1-hour speaker group. I have a position in that. Actually, I have a lot of positions in that home group since COVID, but I am a speaker getter there. So I do. There's always a message of hope. I always try to find people to come out and speak who have a message of the 12 steps and a relationship with God, And my sobriety is June 10th, 2002, so I had 20 years sober yesterday. I couldn't believe it. It's a miracle, because before I got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I couldn't go 20 minutes without a drink. And that's the God's honest truth. And thank God I got sober, because as a result of me getting sober, my whole family's world is different. My children's world is different. My grandchildren's world is different. I don't think I can ever pay Alcoholics Anonymous back for what it's done for me, because what it's done for me, it's given me a brand new life, not a patched up old life. And not only that, my whole family, my ex-husbands even followed me into the rooms if this crazy that one can get sober, anybody can get sober, And my sister got sober, my brother got sober, my daughter's sober. And it's just a miracle. And of course, my brother and my sister are well, at least we didn't drink like you. And maybe you should have. Maybe you would have got sober quicker, But anyway, so I'm from New Jersey. I was born and raised in New Jersey, by the Jersey Shore. And I don't really remember a lot, I just remember I had a father who was a drunk. And my brother and my sister... My brothers and my sister would look at him and they would be disgusted, and I would look at him and I just loved him. I would absolutely watch him drink, and I'd watch him transform. And I was so mesmerized by what was going on in his world. I just could not wait to drink, because I have been highly disturbed my whole entire life. I really seriously, when I say this, I mean it from the depths of my soul. I needed a drink in kindergarten. I really did. I wish I would have started in kindergarten, because I probably would have got here a lot sooner, because drugs are not part of my story. I just drank. And thank you. A little closer. Yeah. All right. So I really wish I would have started. And actually, I probably could have, the way my father drank. He wouldn't even know if I was drunk, because he was drunk all the time. But I do remember him drinking all night long, and just start drinking coffee in the morning and going off to work, And I remember getting up in the middle of the night with him and getting him a beer and popping it open and drink as much as I could until I got into the living room. But I don't remember the effects produced by alcohol at that young age. I just know I did it a lot. You know what I mean? And I just remember I always felt safe and protected. And he was the first person I really felt spiritually connected to, until I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was probably because he suffers from the same thing that I suffer from, a spiritual malady, And so So I just couldn't wait till I grow up because I was so bored. I had 2 older brothers, a younger sister. I don't remember them at all. I remember going to the bars with my dad, and it'd be dark and it'd be smoky, and the jukebox would be playing, and I loved it. I loved it. That's like my favorite memory as a child from my childhood. You know what I mean? So right there, it's telling you like I'm probably not like a normal kid, you know. And so my best friend, she went to Jersey City one weekend to go to hang out with her cousin, and when she got home, we met Monday morning at the bus stop, and she said, I drank this weekend, and she said, and I got to tell you, we can't even wait for the weekend. We got to go now. And I was just like, all right. And so we cut school, we jumped on a bus, and we went to Jersey City. And what happened is I experienced my very first spiritual awakening. For the first time in my whole entire life, I could breathe easy. I was comfortable in my own skin. I could care less what you thought about me. Like my head stopped. And immediately I became extremely seductive. My clothes came off, and I went into a blackout. And that's how I drank from the very beginning to the very end, except towards the end, I wasn't so seductive, but I was definitely naked, you know, and I found something that worked. And I got to tell you, it wasn't like I was like trying to like show off this fabulous body that I had, because that wasn't the case. It was like so freeing, because my whole entire life I've always looked like SpongeBob. I've been square and flat with skinny legs, except 4 years ago I quit smoking, and now I look like the fat little starfish Patrick, you know what I mean? But I tell you, I found something that was like so powerful and so freeing, like I couldn't believe it, like the impact it had on me. Like I needed to drink as much as I needed to eat, because that's how tight and wound up and how much my head attacked me, right? And I was never going to wait for anybody ever to offer me alcohol ever again. I lived up the street from this liquor store, and I would take my lunch money and I would get old men to buy me alcohol. So I was a daily drinker from the very beginning, and I had to, because my head was so loud, and my chest was so tight, and I couldn't breathe, and I needed a drink desperately. And I didn't care about the consequences I had to suffer for me to drink, you know. I was willing to go to any lengths to drink. And so, like 14 years old, you know, I'm like getting in all kinds of trouble. It was Memorial Day weekend, and I stood out in front of this liquor store, and I got some old guys to buy me alcohol, and I went to the beach, and I was roaming around the beach. And it was paid like a little seductive at this point, you know what I mean? And I ran into these 2 guys, and these 2 guys said to me, do you want to come drinking with me? And I was like, absolutely. Absolutely. And I jumped in the car with these 2 guys who had no idea who they were, nor did I care who they were. I just knew I was going to be drinking. And what happened that day absolutely changed my world. And what happened that day, right, is, and I talk about this because like it really did change my world completely until I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So what happened this day is I wound up getting brutally beaten and raped, which does not make me an alcoholic. What makes me an alcoholic is I have an allergic reaction to alcohol. Once I put any alcohol in my system, it sets off a phenomenal craving, and once I start, I can't stop. And when I do stop, all I do is think about it until I pick it up again. But this day, right, I became a victim, right? And I used this until I got into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And I convinced my mother, like, Mom, if you were, and let me tell you something, like, I'm not trying to like downplay this because it was like dramatic. It was crazy. But I convinced my mother, like, if you were 14 years old and you were raped, you would need to drink. So my mother allowed me to drink when I was 14 years old. Not the way I wanted to, but enough to take the edge off, so when they went to sleep, I could sneak out the window and finish the job off. And they started sending me to counselors and psychiatrists, and I went to hundreds of them, and they started saying stuff like to me, like, you're very depressed, and they started putting me on medications, right? You know, this is like, and they would say stuff to me like this. They would say, now, Patty, if you drink on this medication, it is going to triple the effect of alcohol. I was like, yay! You know what I mean? Because I needed something tripling the effect of alcohol, you know? And so I was a mess, you know. I barely made it out of high school. I made it out of high school with a note from one of my psychiatrists saying if I didn't graduate, I'd have a meltdown. And, you know, since I've been sober, I haven't been to a psychiatrist. I just thought of that, you know. Because I had a psychiatrist write me notes, you know, and all kinds of stuff, you know. Give me the meds that triple the effect of alcohol. And so I got a note from my psychiatrist, graduated high school, 18 years old, you got to go. We're done with you. You graduated high school. You're 18 years old, you gotta leave. And so I left home at the age of 18, and I was like so glad to get the hell out of there, you know. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to curse. I was so glad to get out of there, right? And so I moved in with a go-go dancer, and I was supposed to watch her some while she danced, and what happened is my life spiraled out of control. Because what I didn't have is I didn't have my mother to control my life anymore. And I started getting arrested, and I started thinking, like, I don't even have, like, a reason and purpose for living anymore. Like, I need to, like, the only thing that I'm doing is living to drink, and I need to do something. And so I came up with a plan. And my plan was, what I should really do is have a baby. Because if I have a baby, I'll have someone to love. I'll have a reason and purpose to live, and somebody that will always love me. And so that's what I set out to do. I set out to get pregnant, right? And I found a dumb guy. He was more than willing, and I got pregnant, right? And my mother was really upset that I was pregnant, and she thought it was best if I got married. I was raised Catholic, like super, super Catholic, right? And my mother thought it was best if I got married. So one of my psychiatrists, one of them just happened to be a reverend, you know what I mean? So my psychiatrist married me, right? And this is how my dad would describe me. My dad was so funny and sarcastic, and I loved him. My dad would say, Patty, if you were in Shea Stadium and Shea Stadium is filled with brain surgeons, you pick up the hot dog vendor, right? And so that's exactly what this guy was, the hot dog vendor. And I am sorry if I offend anybody, but I don't mean to, because a couple weeks ago I was speaking in a rehab, right? And when I said that, the whole place went silent, right? And they were like, he's a hot dog vendor. So, right? So what I did is I proposed to him, you know what I mean? I'm like, when you get out of detox, I'm gonna come and marry you, you know what I mean? And he lightened up a bit, you know? But anyway, so what I did was I just married this hot dog vendor, right? And like, I didn't want to be married, you know what I mean? I didn't want to get married. I never wanted to get married. And so he got a job one time. It was like a miracle, right? He got a job and he went off to work, and I left, right? I left with my little girl. And I tell you, and I had this little girl that I loved with all my heart and soul, right? And all I wanted to do was to be the best mom, you know, and what I wasn't a mom at all. I would take her and I'd drop her off. At the end of the year, I'd get a really big income tax check, right? And I would take that little girl and I'd drop her off with that hot dog vendor, and I go off and I'd vacation, you know? And I got to go to a lot of places, and I don't remember a lot of anything, but I do remember when I was on vacation in Southern California, right? And I met this really hot Marine, right? And he was like super athletic. He was from Minnesota. He was stationed in Southern California. He was like really like athletic. I'm not. Like, my mother really did try like to sign me up for like soccer when I was in second grade, and they took me off the field and they're like, you're in charge of handing out oranges. All right, so now we got the picture, right? Not athletic whatsoever. But he doesn't know that. And like, the thing is, for me, like, I don't even know who I am, right? I don't even know what I like. Like, I am so like, I'm like so dead, right? I'm so dead. And what I like, what you like, I do what you do, you know what I mean? And so he's like into all these winter sports. He's into like skiing and ice hockey and all that stuff. And so what I do is, like, I just want to impress him, right? Like, I wanted to do with everybody. So what I do is I lie and I tell him that I'm an expert skier. Right? Because, like, seriously, like, how would he know that I'm not? You know what I mean? And so I get back to Jersey, and he really was impressed by me, because he called me up and he said to me, he said, Patty, I'm going to come to Jersey and I'm going to take you skiing in Vermont. And I thought, oh my God, that is so amazing. I've never drank in Vermont, you know? Because that's what I was planning on doing, is planning on getting him good and loaded, because I've never skied my whole entire life. And so we get to Vermont, and I don't know how to ski, but I can't tell him that. I would look like a liar, right? So we're going up this expert hill. Like, I barely got on a ski lift, you know what I mean? I'm like shaking, like literally shaking. He's like, are you all right? I'm like, I just haven't skied in a while. And it's like so high. I think it was like actually higher than the ceiling, right? And we get all the way up to the top of the mountain, and I don't know how to get off a ski lift. I never skied in my whole entire life, you know what I mean? So I don't know how to get off this ski lift, right? So I fall off the ski lift, and I get tangled around the poles. They got to like shut down the ski lift, untangle me, the expert skier, right? And so I said, you know what, I haven't skied in a while. Why don't you go ahead and I'll meet you down at the end of the mountain. So he takes off skiing because he skis. And I rolled, I climbed, I crawled. It was so high, it took me 3 hours to get down the bottom of that mountain. But since he skied, he would ski past me every once in a while. And what I would do is, if I wasn't like already on the ground, I would throw myself on the ground and give him a little pose, you know what I mean? So he would think I was like, like I'm a nut job, you know what I mean? Like, and this is like a perfect example of some of the stuff I would do because I'm a liar and I don't know who I am and I just want to impress people, that I'd get myself jammed up in all kinds of stuff. And what would happen is, every time my life would get really unmanageable, what I would think, I was like, I need to have another baby, you know? And so by the time I'm pregnant with my third daughter, I can't stop drinking. My first 2 pregnancies, I did not drink. You know, so I know it's like a progressive illness, right? And I would try so hard not to take a drink. But what would happen is, like, I just wanted to take a drink just to take the edge off. You know what I mean? I just needed to take the edge off. And what would happen is I would take the drink and I would need the second drink more than I needed the first. And I would need the third more than I needed the second. And all of a sudden I'm in a blackout and I got this baby growing inside of me. And I tell you, I never want to do anything to hurt my children, right? But I just can't stop drinking. So I have a priest bless the baby inside me. I have holy water blessed by the Pope that I put on my stomach, and I have prayer services going on all over the country, and I could do all those things, but I couldn't stop drinking. And so the day she came, I was scared to have her. My best friend came with me, and when the doctor went to hand me that little girl, I wouldn't take her because I was so scared what he did to that little girl. And they handed her to my best friend, and when I see my best friend smile, I knew that baby was okay, you know? And I knew I was powerless over alcohol, you know? And I knew my life was unmanageable. Like, my life has been unmanageable since kindergarten, like I said. But I don't think it's like all the DUIs and all the states I lived in and all the affairs and all the craziness. I don't think that's what they're talking about for me, for the unmanageability. I think what it means is what they're talking about on page 52 of the big book, you know? My personal relationships were a mess. All those bedevilments, you know, my personal relationships were a mess. I was prey to misery and depression. I couldn't make a living. All that stuff was going on with me for years and years. And not that I could even put words to it, or even if I could put words to it, I would never tell anybody that, because what would they think of me and what would they want to do, lock me up? Meanwhile, fast forward years later, when I go to a psych ward, I can't believe I hadn't gone there sooner. It was so enjoyable, you know what I mean? But I don't know that, right? And so I would never tell anybody. And so it took me a lot of years to concede to my innermost self that I was alcoholic, like it talks about on page 30 of the big book, you know? And so what happens is I wound up marrying my 2 youngest daughters' father, who is a chef, so he's a little upgrade hot dog vendor. And he was like a good chef. Like, they would send out his resume, they come in, they pack us up, they move him off to wherever we were gonna, he was gonna be a chef at. And I would get there and like, I never wanted to be married, you know? And so I never acted like a married woman. And what I would do is, like, I would sleep with the whole kitchen staff. I'm definitely kidding. I would never sleep with the old guys, right? And so he would be a little horrified by that, and he'd send out his resume, they'd come and they'd pack him and the kids up, and he'd leave, and I'd stay behind till I started missing my kids, and I'd follow behind. So towards the end of my drinking, we live in Georgia, right? And I ran into this girl in Georgia, and she said to me, she said, you know, Patty, if you show up for a job interview and you're stoned and they hire you and you show up every day stoned, that's how people think you are. And I thought that was the most amazing thing I ever heard in my entire life. And so I started drinking around the clock because I don't smoke. I don't get stoned. So I started drinking around the clock because I think, well, this is how people are just going to think I am. You know what I mean? And I drink vodka, so you definitely can't smell it. You know what I mean? So I'm a complete mess, you know, and I'm trying to be a better mother to my youngest daughters. I'm like showing up to their school and I'm carving pumpkins and doing gingerbread houses and all kinds of, and going on class trips, you know, and I'm drunk out of my mind. And so they call my little girls down to the office and they're like, does your mom drink? And my little girl said, my mom only drinks water, coffee, and vodka. So now the school's on to me, you know what I mean? And I'm a mess. And I'm having an affair once again with another young guy who works in the kitchen of our restaurant. And my husband knows it and he's had it with me. And let me tell you something, like, I just told you what kind of wife I was. But my husband was very abusive, and by no means do I think I'm a victim. I suited up and showed up for everything in my life, and I knew one thing, that if I pushed him hard enough or I got caught cheating again or whatever, he would either beat me up or lock me in a room and scream at me for 3 hours and tell me what a piece of crap I was, and then he'd feel really bad. And he'd leave me alone for a week, and I could drink the way I wanted to drink for a week, and I was willing to take a beating to drink the way I wanted to drink. So he knows I'm having this affair again, and he comes home, and he drags me from the kitchen and into the bedroom, and he gets on top of me, and he strangles me till I pass out. And I come to, and he says to me, Patty, if you are afraid of me, tonight's the night to be afraid of me, because I'm going to kill you. And I got to tell you, I took a lot of beatings from him, and I never seen anything in his eyes the way I seen that night, and I knew he meant it. And he started strangling me till I almost passed out again. He fell off of me, and I got away, and I called the police, and the police came, and they came and arrested him, and they took him off to jail. And it's not like jail in Jersey. They let you go for everything. You know, you're out that same night, and they have high bail on him, and he's stuck in jail. And I start thinking to myself, I said, you know what I think? I think my problem really is Georgia. I think if I get back to Jersey, I'm going to be okay. I think Georgia's the problem here, you know. And so I was planning on going back to Jersey, and then the phone rang, and it was the police, and they said that his mother bailed him out, and he was coming home to pack up his stuff, because now I have a restraining order on him. So I figured tonight's the night. I'm gonna leave tonight. I'm gonna stop, and I'm gonna get a 100-proof bottle of vodka, and I'm gonna pack up my kids in my car, and I'm gonna head off to Jersey. And what happened is I came to, and my house was filled with the police, and it was filled with my neighbors. And my husband was not only packing up his stuff, but he was packing up my little girl's stuff. And they said that my little girls were better off with him than a drunk as a mother. And it was the truth. And he was like attempted murder, attempted rape, kidnapping. He got charged with kidnapping from taking me from one room and into another. And they said that they were better off with him than a drunk as a mother. And it was the truth, because every single day I would endanger their lives. I would run over railroad tracks and blow out the tires in my car, and I'd hit trees, and my little girls were terrified each and every single day. And they just never knew what to expect with me, you know what I mean? Because I was like a loose cannon, and I was screaming, and I would make them sit in the middle of the car, just in case, because I was such a mess. And like, I knew he had nowhere to go with those little girls, so I told him I would leave, you know? And this is the thing, like I love my kids more than anything in this world. Like, if anybody ever did anything to my kids, I would kill you, right? And my favorite speaker, he talks about how he comes to on a bus with this little girl, and she's crying, and she's shaking, and she's holding her stomach. And he says to her, what's the matter, honey? And she said, Daddy, I'm so hungry, you forgot to feed me today. So they get to a rest stop, and he goes in, and he gets a bottle of wine, and he gets a sandwich, and when he gets up to the counter, he only has enough money for one, and he puts back her sandwich, because he is so sick and he's so shaken that he needs that bottle. And that's the kind of drunk I was. You know what I mean? Like, if I take one drink, I will steal my kids' food, you know? And so I left, and I took off to St. Petersburg, Florida, and I got there, and I was like so relieved he was gone. And I was so relieved my kids were gone, because now I could really drink the way I wanted to drink, you know? And it got to the point that I couldn't go 20 minutes without a drink, because I would shake so violently. And my head and my heart would attack me so bad I wouldn't know what else to do but just to take a drink. And I weigh 80 pounds, and I'm bruised from head to toe from falling, and I'm bright yellow. And I got this long hair, and it's falling out, and I got bald patches all over my head. And I have nowhere to go. And I can't even work in the public in the condition I'm in, and I don't know what to do. And so I wound up going back to Georgia, and I wound up moving into this crack hotel, right? And I am such a mess, right? And I can't go 20 minutes without a drink, so I can't work in the public, and nobody would hire me in the condition I'm in anyway. So I wound up doing things I never dreamed I would ever do, because every day was so hard for the things that I had to do each and every single day for a bottle of vodka, and I just couldn't even believe where I wound up, you know? And I just didn't know that women drank that like me or did the things that I did. And what happened is, like, I just couldn't handle it. And across the street from this crack hotel was this car dealership, right? And the mayor owned it. And I had this grand opening to my restaurant. I had, like, the priest bless the place. I had the mayor cut the ribbon. And so I went to the mayor, and he gave me a job detailing cars, so I could be out in the spraying hoses, seeing rainbows. I stopped doing the stuff I was doing in that crack hotel. Right? And I moved out of that crack hotel, and I moved into a trailer park, and things were really looking up for me. You know what I mean? I was like moving on up in the world, you know what I mean? I have arrived, right? And so I came into work one day, and the mayor says to me, where are the keys to that van? Because we're selling that van, and I have no idea why I had it, but I had it back at my trailer. And he says, grab something off that lot and go home and get those keys. And I grabbed a big red truck because I like trucks, and I went home, and I figured I might as well have a few more drinks. 6 drinks later, I'm like rushing to get back to work, and I come to, and the truck is totaled. And there's fire engines and ambulance and all kinds of craziness going around. And they got me in the ambulance, and they took me off to the hospital where they put 150 stitches in my face, and from there they took me off to jail, and that was my 6th DUI. And and I got to tell you, like, when I got to jail, I was relieved, because without a doubt, the state of New Jersey sent me to AA. You know, with all those DUIs, I was sentenced to AA, and I remember walking into the rooms, and I really believe this. Like I would think, like, if you drank like me, like, you just don't stop. I have to be locked up to stop, you know what I mean? And why the hell would anybody want to be sober, you know what I mean? I can't even breathe when I'm sober, you know what I mean? And I wasn't looking for a message of hope, you know, because I didn't want to get sober, you know? So I really believe, like, the only way I could ever get sober is if I was locked away. And so my father's trying to bail me out of jail, and I don't want to get out, because I know once I get out, I'm going to do the same things I was doing before, right? And so finally I get out, and now I'm doing the same things I was doing in that crack hotel, in that trailer park. And my world is small, and it's dark, and it's dirty, and I'm so tired, and I'm so lonely. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about the loneliness that only another alcoholic knows, right? And I just don't want to sell my soul one more day for a bottle of vodka, because what happened is the vodka stopped working. No matter how much I drank, my head wouldn't stop anymore. I couldn't erase the things that I did that day, you know, and I just couldn't do it. And so what I did is, like, because throughout my drinking, I have always prayed my whole entire life, because that's how I was raised, you know. I always believed in God. And so I would, right after I got raped, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, why would God let this happen to me? And this is what my mom told me, because this is what my mom believed. She said, Patty, God isn't punishing you, God's just making you stronger. So all these years, as I'm making decisions based on self that are putting me in the position to be harmed, I think I'm getting stronger to get to God. And I think God's so far out there that I have to pray to the saints. And I would pray to St. Jude. He's the patron saint of hopeless and despair cases, and I'd pray to him all the time. And this day I didn't say a prayer to St. Jude, I said a prayer to God. And I know there's a God, because God's the only one I asked for help that day. And I said, God, you got to help me, because I can't get any stronger. And I took a bottle of Tylenol PM, and I drank whatever vodka I had left, and I came to on June 10th, 2002 in intensive care. And the nurse said to me, and I thought she was just like trying to help me, keep me stay sober. She said to me, no, if you stay sober from this day forward, this is a really great sobriety date. And I had no idea that it was AA's anniversary. I had no idea about anything. I just thought she was trying to make me stay sober, right? And they called my father, and they told my father that he had to calm down, because he probably was going to have to take me home in a body bag, you know. And my sister, my father, my oldest daughter showed up in Georgia, and they're doing all kinds of tests, and eventually it came back that I had no kidney, no liver damage. From there, they shipped me off to a psych ward, a mental hospital, which I really loved, you know. And they kept me there long enough till I could stop shaking, till they can get me on a plane and get me back to Jersey, where they had a rehab set up for me, you know. And I got off that plane, and all the bloat was completely off my body. And my brothers were at the airport looking at me, and I swear I was thinking to myself, they are like so jealous of me. I look like a model, you know what I mean? And they're looking at me like, oh my God, she's dying. And I get to this rehab, and I have 7 days there, right? And I lost the ability to read and write. And I was like so embarrassed, right? And they were going to try to get me funded, and they take me up into the office, and they go through my workbooks and my worksheets, and nothing was completed. And they said I wasn't serious about recovery, and that I needed to go. And I just started to cry, because I had nowhere to go. And I never wanted to go back to where I was. I never wanted to sell my soul or give away those kids. I never wanted to do any of that. I never wanted to be that woman I became, you know, because that's not how I was raised. And I was willing to do whatever they wanted me to do. And what they wanted me to do was to go to York, Pennsylvania, to a recovery house. And I don't know what I thought recovery houses were for women who get out of jail for murder and will probably be beating me up, right? And so, but I'm willing to go, you know. And I walk into this recovery house, and there's this girl who lives there. And she takes one look at me, she's talking on the phone, she gets back on the phone, she's like, holy shit, this one's a real doozy, I think she has wet brain. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what wet brain is, you know? And I'm going showing in meetings and I don't understand what anybody's talking about. I'm thinking, oh my God, I got the wet brain, right? And I come back home to her and I'm like, are you sure I have the wet brain? She said, I'm pretty sure you got wet brain. She said, not only that, everybody is talking about you, and I knew they were all looking at me. She said, they're all calling you Skeletor, right? And I am a complete mess, right? And I have nowhere to go, and I just don't ever want to go, and I'm showing up, and I don't understand what people are talking about, right? And 20 years ago, in York, Pennsylvania, there was these people that were coming into York AA from Baltimore with the big book. And my recovery house, you weren't allowed to get a big book sponsor from Baltimore because they were destroying AA, right? And I wasn't going to be destroyed by these people. This is the first time I'm getting sober. I'm not going to be destroyed by these people, right? And so somebody introduced me to this woman who's going to be my sponsor. She's not using the big book, you know what I mean? I'm really safe. She's like talking crazy to me. I'm like crazy out of my mind because now I'm about 45 days sober and I start thinking, oh my God, I'm like probably mental because I haven't drank in 45 days and I am like suicidal, homicidal. I want to drink. I want to kill people, you know what I mean? She says, what you got to do is write down every single person you've ever slept with. I was like, oh my God, you know how many states I lived in? Okay, I'm willing to go to any length. She knows what she's talking about, right? And I'm a complete mess, right? And nobody would hire me. You know, I wasn't that yellow, you know what I mean? They could have hired me, yellow, you know? And I look like a model, you know what I mean? But nobody would hire me. Finally, I get this job in Denny's, and I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I'm an alcoholic and I live in a recovery house, and I'm never ever going to tell a single soul there that I live in a recovery house and I'm an alcoholic, right? And one afternoon, we're sitting at the hostess station, and walks this guy from Jersey, and I was like, oh my God, I slept with him and I didn't put him on the list. She's like, oh my God, you keep a list? I was like horrified, right? And I was like, you don't? She's like, no, I don't, right? And so I'm a mess. I'm like screaming and crying, and I want to kill her. I'm like threatening to kill her, you know what I mean? Threatening to kill myself, kill everybody, you know? I can't sleep. I'm having drunk dream after drunk dream, and finally we get together to do this fifth step, or whatever, you know? And this is what she tells me. She says that I've harmed nobody. The only person I've ever harmed was myself, and the reason I was the way I was is because I didn't bond with my mother. And I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe she knows what she's talking about. She's not using that big book that people are being destroyed with, you know what I mean? And I'm getting worse by the day, right? And I think I threatened to kill her one too many times because she called me up one day and she said, Patty, I really think you need to get yourself a new sponsor. She said, I think you have something different than me. And thank God she did say that, because you know what? I do have something different than her. She's a problem drinker. She stopped drinking and her life gets better. I'm a real alcoholic. I stopped drinking and my life gets worse, you know? And I ran into this woman and she absolutely glowed, and she talked about she felt like she was the scum of the earth her whole life, and she didn't feel that way and she didn't look that way. And I asked her if she could be my sponsor, and she talked about the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she said she was from Maryland. I swear I wouldn't be sober today if I didn't have that little touch of wet brain, because I had no idea that the big book and the book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the same thing, and I had no idea that Baltimore was in Maryland, because if I did, I would not be sober today, right? And she said to me, she said, people have been telling you your whole life you just stop drinking, you'd be okay. And she said, you stop drinking, you are definitely not okay. The drinking has never been my problem. Drinking has always been my solution. Now that my solution stopped working, what I needed was a new solution. What I had was a spiritual malady, and what I needed was a spiritual solution. She said, everything I think and need and want, I'm going to put on this back burner, and she's going to teach me this way of life. She said, everything in this world is temporary. The only thing everlasting is God. She said, I must have a love affair with God, because there will come a day that the only thing that comes between me and a drink is God, and I better have a strong foundation. And she said I was going to go home and I was going to say that third step prayer. I was going to help as many people as I could, and if I couldn't help them, I wasn't to hurt them. And she said, next we're going to launch on a vigorous course of action. I was going to start writing this fourth step. And I wasn't doing that. I already did that, or whatever the heck I did. And the only thing that proved to me I was a bigger whore than I thought I was, and I am not doing that, right? But I would say this third step prayer every day. I'd get up and I'd go off to work. I was so helpful, they were giving me awards. I'd come back home. I was like the mother of the house. I took care of the kids, the house, the cleaning, and I went off to a meeting and I'd reach my hand out to somebody who had one day less than me. And I come back home and I throw myself on the kitchen floor and cry because I wanted to drink so bad and I couldn't sleep. I had drunk dream after drunk dream, and I haven't seen my kids in a long time, and everybody was happy, joyous, and free, and everybody's kids were coming back into their lives, and that was not my experience, right? And I called her up, I said, this ain't working. I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. Meanwhile, I'm not, right? And I said, and really what I want to do is I just want to hug my kids for 5 minutes. And she said, Patty, you don't have to physically hug your kids. God can hug them for you, and I want you to pray about that tonight. And I prayed about it that night, and I fell asleep, and I didn't have a drunk dream. I had a dream, and I walked into a room, and all 3 of my daughters were there, and I could feel them hug me. And I don't even know how, but somehow, 2 days later, my middle daughter got my phone number, and she called me, and I was telling her about my dream, and she said, oh my God, Mom, I had the same dream. So if God can bring me and my daughters together in our dreams, God can do anything. And that obsession was finally lifted, because when I got sober, I tell you, like I hear people say the obsession was lifted. That's not my experience. I had the obsession for so long. I held on so tight because this woman who absolutely glowed, drank like me, did the things that I did, and she promised me that my life would get better and I'd have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps like her, and I would have a life beyond my wildest dream, and I just held on, right? And so the obsession was finally lifted, and I did a 4th and 5th step out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I tell you, like, I couldn't not believe I was the problem. I really thought it was the husbands, I really did. But when I could see exactly who and what I was in black and white, right? I could see exactly what the problem was, and it was me. You know, when I got together with her to do this 5th step, and she could tell that I knew exactly that I was the problem and who and what I was. And this is what she said to me. She said, Patty, the things you did when you were out there and the way you drank, you probably needed to do everything you did, so when you got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, you never had to go back out. And she said, and all those dirty, disgusting things I thought I did when I was out there were going to be my biggest gifts to help other men and women. And she's absolutely right. I do not regret my past, right? And she sent me home to do 6 and 7, right? And for the first time since I was 14, my head was silent, you know. Of course, it wasn't silent for long, you know, and I reviewed those first 5 proposals, making sure I left nothing out, you know, because I never wanted to be that person that I was on my 4th and 5th step. I never wanted to be that person. I wanted to walk away a brand new woman, right? And so I was willing to do whatever it takes. I was willing to give everything to God, good, bad, right, or wrong. I don't even know what's good or right. You know what I mean? I just gave it all to God. I said that 7-step prayer. I started working on my 8-step list, and let me tell you something. I harmed more people than I resented. As I'm writing my list, the state of Georgia's looking for me, and they want me back in Georgia for that 6 DUI and for totaling that truck, right? And you know, that's my 6 DUI, so it looked like I was going to go to jail for a couple of years. So my sponsor said, we really got to get you through the 12 steps and get you through as many amends as we can, so when you go to jail, you'll be spiritually fit to carry this message. And I got to tell you, my grand sponsor, rest his soul, I just love him. His name was Tom Flynn, and what he did is he laid down his life for me, and he started teaching me how to read and write, and he'd read spiritual literature to me, and he never shut the heck up, you know what I mean? He would talk from the time I seen him to the time I left, and sometimes he'd give me a CD of himself to pop in on my way home, right? And so he would tell me, he said, Patty, the judge, the lawyers, the prosecutors, none of those people are in charge. God's in charge, and if that's where you're supposed to go, you'll go to jail, and you'll carry this message in jail. And if God doesn't see fit for you to go to jail, you'll carry this message outside of jail, you know? And so I had to start getting some of my amends done before I go to jail, so I can get through the steps, you know? And so we're going to start with the closest state, obviously, so we started with Jersey. And my first amends is going to be my dad, right? And I got to tell you, I love my dad with all my heart and soul. I called my dad up and I said, Dad, I'm coming to Jersey to see you. And he said, Patty, I really believe for the first time in your life, you're going to be okay with this drinking thing. And he said, and I got to tell you, I'm really tired and I feel like I live a life of a houseplant. I'm like, Dad, don't say that. Because my mother died when I was 26 years old from colon cancer, and my father's been so sad. I said, Dad, don't say that. I'm going to come back to Jersey. We're going to go get pizza, pork roll, egg and cheese. We're going to have a great time. So I get to Jersey, and my father knows I'm coming, but he doesn't answer the phone. And I finally get in touch with my brothers. and they said that my father had a stroke that morning, and he was in critical condition. He was paralyzed and he couldn't even talk. And so I called my sponsor. I said, looks like I can't make that amends. And she said, oh, yes, you can. She said, you're going to ask everybody to leave the room. You're not going to tell them you're sorry. You've been sorry your whole life. You're going to tell them you're wrong. And that's what I did. And my father started to cry. And I said, Dad, you know what? There's a good chance I'll never be that person ever again if I continue doing the things that I'm doing. And my dad did manage to say the words, I love you, and he died a week later. And I really know that my dad held on for me to get better so we can go home to be with my mom. And I made amends with both those hot dog vendors, you know. And my first husband, right, I said to him, I said, what can I do to make this right? And this is what he said to me. He said, Patty, if I ever want to get sober, I want you to help me get sober. And I was like, absolutely. So every time he wanted to get sober, I would help him get sober. You know, I'd help him get into rehabs. I would bring him to York, you know. Even my sponsor started sponsoring him. Like, I would do whatever it takes, and he never stayed sober. And finally 5 years ago, he called me again. He said, Patty, can you please help me get sober? And I was sponsoring some guy in Levittown, and he helped him get into this rehab. And then from the rehab, he came to York, Pennsylvania, into a recovery house, right? And and what happened is he got sober, right? And he became a father to our daughter, and he became a grandfather to our grandchildren. And he started a business, and he got married, and he had a wife. And then about 3 months ago, he got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and he wound up passing away. And thank God, for me, the amends process is so powerful. Thank God if I'm going to say I'm going to do something, I have to follow through with it, because otherwise I look the same way as I did when I was drinking, except now I'm sober, just lying, you know. And his family came to me at his funeral, and they said to me, thank you so much for never giving up on our son, and thank you to help our son get sober so he had a life before he died, you know. And I got together with my second husband, and he said to me, he said, Patty, I really was going to kill you that night. The only reason I didn't kill you that night is because a bright white light came and hit me in the head and knocked me off of you. You know, and I always thought, the whole time, that God was so far out there, and I've always been in the palm of God's hands, you know. And I went in front of this judge whose daughter was killed a year earlier by a drunk driver, so it definitely didn't look good for me, you know. And the mayor's mother was killed 10 years earlier by a drunk driver. And so I went in front of that judge, and what she gave me was 24 hours in jail. And I guess God thought it was best that I carry this message outside the jail. You know, and I got back to York, Pennsylvania. It was the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And let me tell you something, that I was sober in York, Pennsylvania. People are getting sober now, I can guarantee you that, right? And I start ripping people up off the streets. I got this crusty apartment with these high ceilings, and I moved in one of the girls I sponsor. I'm like, people are getting sober now, okay? We got wood, right? We got wood. We were gonna build a loft, and we were gonna start stacking the drunks, right? And what happened is, nobody stayed sober, not even her, except for me. And my grant sponsor was like, Patty, that's not the way, that's not what we're supposed to do. And I'm thinking to myself, you're so old, you don't even know what you're talking about anymore. I'm saving the world, right? And it was so crazy, people would be shipping us people, right? And so one time they shipped us this crazy couple, this homeless couple, and I said, all right, I'm going to sponsor him. And I said to the other girl I was sponsoring, Julie, I said, you're going to sponsor her, right? And she started sponsoring her. She came back, she said, Patty, she's not even an alcoholic. I said, oh, I know. Sponsor her anyway, you know? And because I was trying to sponsor everybody. I was in Denny's, trying to sponsor the whole kitchen staff. I was trying to, everybody's going to have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, let me tell you something, right? And it was so crazy. So what happened is, one of these little 19-year-olds who was staying with me, right? She didn't want to be sober, and I was like, "You're getting sober, and I'm making you stay sober, right?" And so I came home from work one day, and she was gone. And finally, this drug dealer called me, right? And this was a long time ago, because this would never happen today, right? And he says he has her, right? And I don't know anything about drugs at all, you know what I mean? Until I got sober and moved to York, Pennsylvania, right? And so he has her, and she's been out. And I beg him to please bring her home to me. So he brings her home to me, and I'm terrified. So I call the ambulance. The ambulance come in. They take her out. They shoot her in the heart with something. She comes alive, and she's pissed off, right? She's pissed off now that she's sober, and she's not high, and she's a mess, you know, and they take her off to the hospital, and she comes home, and she don't want to be sober. And what I realized is, what I was doing, I was denying her pain. Because nobody denied me my pain, because if they did, I wouldn't be sober today. And so one of the hardest things I had to do was throw her out, knowing she was probably going to prostitute herself out that night, you know. And since then, she's been sober on and off, and she came to live with me for 5 years, and like she's like one of my kids, and she's one of my close friends. But like my whole thing is like my whole life, I just wanted to be a mom. You know, I didn't even want I just wanted to be a mom, right? And now I'm sober, and my kids, my other 2 kids, they live in Florida now with their father, and they would come, and I would get them every other Christmas, and every summer they would come and spend with me. And they would come, and they would be in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they love Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, how can you not? Like, my sponsor says Alcoholics Anonymous is the best show on earth, you know what I mean? And so one summer, like when they were with me, their father was getting sober in Florida, right? And so they go back home, to start school, and they say to their dad, "Can we go to a meeting with you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I guess you go to meetings all the time with your mom, right?" And so they go to a meeting with him, and after the meeting, they say to him, "They're doing it wrong. That's not how they do it in York, Pennsylvania. And what step are you on?" Because this is the thing, like my daughters know that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous work. Like they have a mother who suits up and shows up for them. They don't have a mother who's a fallen down drunken slut today. You know, they watch women come into our kitchen year after year, absolutely beat up and destroyed from alcoholism, and they watch women go through the steps and they watch them come alive. Like my kids know that the Alcoholics Anonymous works, that the 12 steps works, you know. And I have my oldest daughter, she lives in Jersey, and she's a mess. She's a complete mess. And she has my 2 granddaughters, and like I'm helping everybody. Like I have to help my kids, you know. And so finally I get my daughter into York, Pennsylvania, and she's sometimes sober, sometimes not. You know, and one day she says to me, she said, "Mom," she said, "we have no milk. Do you want me to take the kids in the car and go to Walmart and get a gallon of milk so you don't have to go out today?" I'm thinking, oh my God, A is really working for her. And so she takes my car, my grandkids, and she goes off at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I get a call from the state police, and that she's in jail, she's totaled my car, and that my grandkids are in Hershey Medical. And I have to get there as soon as possible, and they won't even tell me if they're dead or alive. And I'm rushing to get to this hospital, right? And the road to get to the hospital is the one that she's caused all these accidents, and it's hours to get there, right? And I don't even know if they're alive. And I finally get to the hospital, and they won't let me see my grandkids because they think I allowed my daughter to drive drunk with them. And finally I convinced them that I didn't. And so now what they want me to do is become a foster mother, because now my daughter will be in jail. In the state of Pennsylvania, they go back 40 years into your past. You know, they go back 40 years. Like I stabbed one of those husbands. Like I tried to explain it to the police. I just poked him really hard in the face. They're like, "No, that's stabbing," you know? And so I had to be evaluated. I had to jump through hoops, all kinds of, fingerprinted, all kinds of stuff, you know? And if I wasn't approved to be a foster mother, that my little granddaughters would go into foster care to people they didn't know. And finally I got the call, and I was approved to be a foster mother. And so for 5 years, my daughter was in and out of our lives, and she disappeared, and I couldn't find her for weeks, and I didn't know if she was dead or alive, or she was hungry or hot or cold or kept against her will. And I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep, you know. And I would call her PO, and he wouldn't answer the phone. And finally I went into his office, and I sat there for 3 hours, and he finally seen me, and I said, "My daughter has violated, and you need to find her, and you need to put her in jail." And I've been looking for her for weeks, and he found her in 20 minutes. He found her. They know where they're at, you know what I mean? And they put her in jail, you know, and they put her in jail for 10 months, and I was able to sleep, and I was able to eat, and my little grandchildren were safe, and she was safe. And from there, she was sentenced to New Life for Girls for 18 months, which is a Christian program. And we were texting yesterday because she's on her way to Florida to see her sisters. And she's like, Mom, congratulations on your 20 years. And I have 8 years. My daughter has 8 years sober. You know what I mean? And my granddaughters are back with their mother. And my daughter married the pastor, you know? And not only do I have a brand new life, but my kids do too. My kids, if I didn't get sober, my grandchildren would probably be adopted out today because my daughter wouldn't know another way. My sister wouldn't know that there was another way to live. My brother, those ex-husbands, those hot dog vendors even had, well, one of them had a brand new life. You know what I mean? And how can you pay Alcoholics Anonymous back for that? I just can't. You know what I mean? I suit up and I show up, and some days I'm really good and some days I'm just sober, you know? But I have a license. I have a car that's registered and insured all in one state like it's a freaking miracle, you know what I mean? And in 20 years, I've never lost a pair of underwear, you know what I mean? I am a woman of grace and dignity, you know? And I want to thank Ron for allowing me to come out here and share my experience, strength, and hope with you guys. Thank you.
Wow, that's as good as it gets. Let's thank Patty one more time. Our speakers come here at their own time and expense. It's customary for us to form a line, thank them formally, hang out after the meeting after the meeting, ton of food to eat. And if you're not enjoying AA and enjoying life, come see us after the meeting or come over Thursday night, Big Book Study. It's right a block away. 7:30 p.m. I always say we get there at 6:30. We solve all the world problems. So if you got some world problems, bring them along. We'll show you how that works. Anyway, we got a nice way of closing if you care to join us. Let's take a moment of silence. Do with it what you like, and if you care to join us, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, that we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Let's thank that coffee maker too.